Good morning and welcome to the Sports Desk live on channel Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on Facebook. I'm your host, Ed Nunez, along with producer Alden Iwani. Our special guest today is new Albuquerque High boys head coach Greg Brown, also Lobo legend Greg Brown. There's so many things, so many ways we can go with in this interview. But today, Coach, today is about Albuquerque High. You were named the coach of Albuquerque High this past summer, taking over for Ron Garcia, who had been there about 15, 14 years, since 2005. And you were a former player at Albuquerque High, an Albuquerque High Bulldog legend. And tonight, your Bulldogs will take on Santa Fe at Bulldog City. Now, the only thing is there's no fans allowed in. We're not a Green County yet. But I wanted to ask you, what's your feeling today as far as, you come full circle, Coach, and it's your turn tonight to take your Bulldogs into battle.
This will be my first game as the head basketball coach for Albuquerque High. I have butterflies just like I had when I played, and I have butterflies, even now as a coach going into our first game, especially during the pandemic with no spectators. But we'll have support there. We're looking forward to getting the Demons at home at Bulldog City.
One of the things, Coach, and this is a rivalry that goes back. I talked to Carl Morano, the Santa Fe principal, last night, and he played against you in 1989. Santa Fe lost double overtime in the pit, and then Albuquerque High, Russell and Henry hits the last second shot from La Cueva in 89, and they beat you in 89, and you turn around and beat La Cueva in 1990. So this is a storied rivalry, and you mentioned to me one that goes back even when Ernie Padilla played for Santa Fe, and Santa Fe beat Albuquerque High in 78 in the state championship. Talk a little bit about what it feels like to face the Demons as your friend. It could be anybody. It could be Highland, West Mesa, but it's Santa Fe. Talk a little bit about what it feels like for you to face Santa Fe in your first game as a head coach.
We're really excited. I've been watching Santa Fe. Again, I was out of town. I was living in Georgia, and I didn't get a chance to see a lot of the games, but I kept up with Santa Fe. I was actually at one of the games when Santa Fe beat Volcano. I think that was in 2019. I'm not sure, in the pit. But I watched that team, and they were really aggressive. They played really good defense. They had really good shooters. And so, this our first game is going to be a tough matchup, tough challenge for us. We're just going to do what we like to do, and we're going to try to focus on what we do and try to get better. When we understand we got 10 more games to go, but we're just taking one at a time, and I think all the young men are excited.
I know you are, Coach. I know you are. You mentioned you took over in the middle of a pandemic, right? And we haven't seen, you and I, known each other for 30 years, and we've never seen a pandemic of this nature. And so you took over, right? And normally basketball is not played now. You're planning for the summer program, the summer workouts, and now you've got games back to back to back. And talk a little bit about the preparation and how in dealing with the pandemic, as you mentioned to me the other day, how hard it is to deal with the public health department. Not saying that it's bad, but you have guidelines you have to follow every single practice, every single day. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think initially, before they gave us the go for our official practice, when we were practicing in the pods, that made it difficult. We just did a lot of skill development, and we just separated the guys and made them go, on a separate basket. We didn't go live, we weren't going body to body contact. And I think, you should always practice at game speed. And I think the toughest thing was to, try to adjust to actually going live and having contact. I think for most coaches, that would have been an issue.
You mentioned that, in Santa Fe, Coach Cole has been there 5 years. I talked to him last night. He's got the utmost respect for you. Classy, calls you classy. He's a fan of you when you were Lobo. Coach Cole has a very good team. They've got some guards, and they've got length. They like the pressure. Talk a little bit about what you've seen. You mentioned Volcano Vista and Santa Fe in 2019. They beat Trisco Heritage beat Santa Fe for the title that year. And that might have been one of the best games I saw as far as the championship for a long time. Talk a little bit about what you expect to see tonight. And you got to see them a little bit. They have one game under their belt. They beat Espanola. Espanola is not bad either, coached by Gabe Martinez. You got to see them a little bit. what kind of, what do you see with the Demons that concerns you a little bit, and without revealing your own game plan?
Right. No, we're just gonna play basketball, but the young man that scored 29 or 30 points against Espanola obviously is somebody that we need to concentrate on. But I know that Coach Cole has, his teams play a team basketball, and then they get the ball to the person who needs to score at that time. They play great defense. They have great help defense. They play good on ball defense. Like you said, they pressure the ball. They can get after you. They got some good athletes, good point guard. Uh, you know, so we have our hands full. We've got good athletes as well. We're missing two starters due to football, and so our guys get a chance to get out there and get some varsity experience today, and I think it'll be good for us.
I don't think there's any question about it. Now, Coach, they always say that you can go home again, right? You can always go home, and Albuquerque High is home. Now, people may not remember this, but I know I do. You played at St. Mary's when growing up. You were an eighth grader at St. Mary's. Then you went to Albuquerque High, and again, a Bulldog legend. And there's so many point guards to mention that if I don't mention, and I'll go over some. Trini Salas, Tommy Maestas, Paul Soto, Darren Sanchez, Milton Seaman. Now I'm talking about point guards because J.Q. Martinez, Glenn Lucero, Lawrence Mitchell. There's so many of them. If I don't mention one of them, Albuquerque High has legendary point guards there, right? Now, some would say Drew Tapia might belong in that. He's probably we thought of later. I mean, the guy scored 54 points in one game. Drew Tapia was incredible. And so Albuquerque High has a history of great play at the guard position. And in your 1990 championship team was as good, I think, as any of the other 6 championship teams that Albuquerque High had. Now, we can argue Coach Metters, the rest in peace, if he was still here, he would tell you that his 71 team was better than all of them, right? Now, your 90 championship team was pretty darn good. So you returned to the scene of where you won a championship. What does that mean to you?
Well, I've got 2 guys on my staff that's won, Brandon, who's won 2, and then Miguel, who's won 1. So, and then also Brian Wiley, as far as point guards, Anthony Collins, and like you say, you can't leave him out. Phil Edmond, he'll still argue that the Iron Five was the best Bulldog team ever. I would argue that, yeah, that's true. Maybe that's true, but I would have had 50 on y'all. But stuff like that. and then our point guard, all the point guards that went, and then I think his name is Jude, right? I didn't get a chance to see him, but I seen
Jude Tapia.
Yeah, Jude Tapia, and I seen highlights. Wow, what a great scorer, great player. And so yeah, you can debate that. I don't debate the championships. I don't say my team is better than your team, or I just like the championships. What did you do? What it took to win? Did you work with your team to win? Because my senior year we won the state championship. I had 42. We only lost 1 game that year, and I had 42 that night, but we lost. So I don't like to go out and get 40 and 50 and then lose the game. So I just like, as long as you're winning, we don't have to compare the championships. That's just my opinion.
You're right. That's true, but it's always done. Now, I've been around enough Albuquerque High guys, right? A lot of those guys are very good friends, and I've been around the discussions and heard them. And one of the things, you mentioned Anthony Collins was a very, very good friend of mine. Milton Seaman was a good point guard, right? And they've always had stellar play at that Bulldog guard position. And yes, the 90 team that you had with Ernest Jenkins, Danny Castellano, Jeff Cedillo, Lakes, Brucker, Edward Edmond. Edward Edmond, what a fantastic player he was. Fantastic. So I think, again, it's funny that you say you don't want to compare, but I heard comparisons, especially from Coach Metters, all the time, right? Coach Metters, rest in peace, was always going to say, and so would Coach Edmond, that team, 71 team, the Iron Five, was the best. But, Coach, I lead into that because it's got to mean something to you, and I asked you this on the radio on Sunday. Coach, when I think of Albuquerque High, I see Coach Holzman with that Kelly green blazer for every game. Now, you said you weren't going to sport that yet. Now, you may later down the line, but it's just got to mean something to you to come home, man. You know, there's no fans there tonight, right? And we don't get the band and all the ambiance that a game at Bulldog City used to have. But you're going home, and it's got to mean something to you.
Yeah, not having any spectators tonight for my first game. Uh, I was expecting to see a lot of those Bulldogs sitting there. Bulldogs like Arnold Senna. Bulldogs like Larry Williams. Guys with Phil Edmond. I would love to see them sitting in the stands when we had our first game. That's not going to happen. The Green Blazer, Jim Holzman. I mean, I sat in those practices and in those games, and I remember almost every practice scenario from my 4 years at Albuquerque High. Um, I remember preparing for Hobbs my junior year, and we were preparing for the full court press. And Coach Alvin Metters, he had played against that Hobbs team, in '71, and he told us what it was going to be like. And I was so competitive, I didn't even want to hear about Hobbs. I didn't even want to hear the scouting report. I was just hoping that they would press us, and that and we ended up beating Hobbs. I had a triple double. So, you know, when we talk about Bulldogs, I'm all about the Bulldogs. And when we talk about rivalries, Santa Fe was always a rival. Hobbs was always a rival. La Cueva started becoming a rival. Um, West Mesa was always a good rival for us in that time. And I remember coming into those games, a JV game would be playing, and I would just be walking in the gym and to see all those people from the community, Wells Park, Badelas, Kirkland Edition, you know,
Sanho.
South Broadway. Yes,
Yeah.
they would all be sitting there. I would get handshakes, hugs. We can't do that now, right?
Right.
But handshakes, hugs, kisses on the cheek. One of the best experiences I ever had, and that's what I want to bring back, to Bulldog basketball. I want the kids to kind of understand, how we play for our community. We didn't play for Facebook. We didn't play for the gram, Instagram. And I'm not taking nothing away from modern technology, but we played for our community, and our community wanted us to be successful.
Coach, when you say those things and about the games, right? And then there's the band, right? The band, man, when I was there, even when I, was coach at Highland and I played at Highland, you could hear that, the drums, and then the song. My wife is a Bulldog. She went to Albuquerque High in '77. So you mentioned that all the communities that were there, and you mentioned Larry Williams, all the guys. Albert Salas was a big fan. Albert Salas would be behind the bench. You got all these Bulldog alumni, and it won't happen tonight, but just those memories that you have, and especially the Hobbs press, right? Now, Coach Metters would always tell me, Coach Metters was a big mentor to me when I was coaching at Highland. He'd always say that Coach Holzman would throw 7 guys out there to simulate the Hobbs press. Now, I'm sure you vividly you remember that, I'm sure, because that Hobbs press. But they used to say that the pit was Bulldog West, right? When they played at the pit, it's Bulldog West. That's how many fans the pit, the Albuquerque High had as far as support.
Yeah, we played Hobbs. Hobbs was 29-1, I believe. We were like, I don't know, that was my junior year. We played them at 10 in the morning. Actually, we played them at 10 in the morning, standing room only. We beat Hobbs. After the first quarter, Ed, I went and ran up the ramp. That's how hard that press was. After the first quarter, I just went straight to the ramp. I thought it was halftime. And Edward Edmonds said, come back, Greg. We still got one more quarter to go. Where you going? But then after that, we got Santa Fe. I believe, if my memory is correct, then we got Santa Fe. We just barely squeaked by Santa Fe. We
double overtime, right?
Yeah, we always had problems with Santa Fe. And then I ended up seeing those guys at the North-South game. We became friends. But yeah, they were our real rivals. We would go down to Santa Fe. They would come to Bulldog City. That was a real rivalry.
It's still, like I said, I think it still is. I remember officiating some games too back in the day when Henry Estrada had one team, and then Ronnie Rodriguez and Santa Fe had another. And this was years later after that 78 championship. And with Henry, you would have acted like it was still that fire and vigor was still there. And that was years later. And, Henry's yelling at me about a call, like, Eddie, you got to call this. And I'm like, man, okay, but I think there's people, even when I played for Highland, Albuquerque High was a rival, Sandia was a rival. And so I don't think those go away. But that's funny, the memories that you have, because Phil Edmond in the championship game in 71, where Coach Holzman only uses 6 guys. He uses Lee Morgan for what, 2 or 3 minutes. Lee Morgan went in and put some buckets in, but he doesn't use a lot of guys, right? And Coach Edmond tells me he's cramping up, and he's looking over at Coach Holzman, and Coach Holzman doesn't even look in his direction. Don't even look at him. In other words, play through it, right? Same thing with Arnold Senna in the 81 championship. Arnold's a very good friend of mine. He tells me fourth quarter, he's cramping up against Hobbs. He's cramping up. But Coach Holzman, again, doesn't even look at him. Like, you got to play through that. So those are memories, I'm sure, that you have as well, and good ones. And so you're about to embark on your own memories over there.
Yeah, I love New Mexico basketball, and that's another thing. I love New Mexico basketball. I was able to go to NMJC, leave Albuquerque, just go to Hobbs, play 2 years, return back and play for New Mexico. I grew up here in New Mexico. Yeah, I had rivals, guys. You see me in the gym, guys that I played hard against, but I'm all friends with those guys. I respect them, and I respect New Mexico basketball. I think it's hard for a kid, young athlete from New Mexico, to try to go on and play Division I basketball. To be honest with you, we've had a few, and like myself, I always wanted to be a Lobo. I grew up in New Mexico. New Mexico basketball, at that time, every gym was packed. Every gym. Even the girls in some places, the gym was packed. So I'm just hoping to bring some excitement, to New Mexico basketball. And um, I want to win. Obviously, I'm competitive. You know that, and I want to win. And I know anybody who coaches against the Bulldogs want to beat the Bulldogs. And so hopefully that'll bring some excitement into the gym and excitement to New Mexico.
It's
That's
funny,
to
you're right.
be
Yeah,
honest.
you're not wrong about that. Back in the day, when Albuquerque High, and they had a long legacy of winning, and they'd wear those jerseys, Albuquerque, right? And they'd intimidate a lot of people, man, because it's like, oh, well, this team represents Albuquerque, right? This is Albuquerque, and then the green and white, the whole tradition, and I've heard this from guys like Arnold Senna, Anthony Collins, Lawrence Mitchell, Glenn Lucero, about Bulldog Pride. Bulldog Pride, we're not giving up. No matter what the circumstances are, we're going to fight our way through it. And that's what made the program for years. You knew that if you played Albuquerque High, your hands were going to be full, man. You knew that. It's going to be a fight. And in some cases, they're going to knock you to the floor. They're going to clap over you. They, clap in front of your face. They're going to do everything they can to get you in your head. And I got to say that I fell victim to that a couple of times. I did, because they had me right where they wanted me a couple of times. But that didn't made me a better player once I understood how to deal with the mental part of the game. Playing with you was the same thing. You come in with the shoulder, driving us back, and you're gonna get yours. That's the bottom line. So I think we all learn from that.
Yeah, I played for that 8 ball team too. I played with 8 ball. I don't know if you remember 8 ball, but I
Oh
was
yeah,
backup point guard for Anthony Collins. And you know, it amazes me that we could go play all of these teams as short of a team as we were. Sometimes we would go in with Ronell Brown or Malcolm Stafford as our post player, all of 6'1", 6'2", or Michael Beard, or in my team, Willie Banks was our center. He's 6'2". He's a point guard, and he had to play center at Albuquerque High. So yeah, you're right. We had that toughness. You know, Albuquerque High always had that toughness. Even though we were playing La Cueva or Sandia, they might have had guys 6'9", 6'10", 6'8". And that was the tradition at Albuquerque High. We just had the mentality, the winning mentality. And I think Coach Holzman, uh, Coach Romo, and Alvin Meadows, they put that mentality into all the players. You just learn that even playing ball at Dennis Chavis Community Center, you just learn that.
Well, the thing was, Coach too, is that Coach Romo, part of that Albuquerque High program, Coach Metters, part of that Albuquerque High program, Coach Ron Estrada, part of that Albuquerque High program. So those guys grew up in that program. Coach Abe Estrada was a longtime assistant to Coach Jim Holzman, and a darn good one before he finally got his own job at Rio Grande. So Albuquerque High blossomed a lot of other coaches too. Ron Garcia, he got his job at Moriarty. He was a head coach for many years at Albuquerque High. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about this year's version of the Bulldogs on the Sports Desk with Coach Greg Brown after these messages.
No, right through the wickets. Did that go? Yes, it did.
Tough serve. Here we go.
That's a great serve, ace by Vance, so a kill and then an ace for the 5'9" 8th grader. Vance, another ace. So back-to-back aces by the 8th grader. Another third successive ace got. Yarno back to pass, looking left, looks to his right, throws, caught, touchdown. Touchdown, Western New Mexico. The run may be coming here. One we've won. Only the keeper to beat, and she does. Rio Rancho's on.
Ferreira, and one run's going to come around to score. Here comes another run, and the Cowboys play two more.
Delivers. That one's driven to right field over the head of the right fielder. That one's out of the park, a home run. And that's directly into the wind. I mean, I don't know what happened there, but she got around on it. She'd hit one like that earlier in the game, but it was foul. Didn't go out, but that one carried and went out of the park.
Man in motion in front of Sorian. He'll get it on a power sweep. On the first play of the game, and he might be off to the races. Nobody in front, and we're going to have an opening touchdown for the Buffaloes.
That's driven deep to left. That ball is history. A three-run bomb for Mr. Galen Young, and the Cowboys lead it 3-0.
Midfield by Molina. Now it's Martin. Still Martin. They've given her a lot of space, and she buries another upper V. They give her way too much room, and she put it away. Jet sweep touchdown for Michael Pardonita. This one will take a beautiful Sunday hop for Bailey. He's looking for some space to develop, looking for some blockers. He's going to make a man miss. That's video game stuff right there. To the sideline, to the house, touchdown, Merrill.
Welcome back to the Sports Desk, live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on Facebook. I'm your host, Ed Nunez. Our special guest today is Albuquerque High boys head coach Greg Brown. And Coach, you face off against Santa Fe tonight. I did want to read you a quote from Sean Williams, S1 double, better known as. Greg was a junior or sophomore point guard when he took over. He played with Jay Chavez. Greg was a sophomore and ran the team like a senior. I knew he was destined to be a great basketball player. So that's from Sean Williams. Remember when you played as a sophomore and you played a lot that year, and you came on and did a really good job for that team. So a quote from your good friend, my good friend, Sean Williams. Coach, what I wanted to ask you though, now, we want to get into this year's version of the Albuquerque High Bulldogs. You mentioned you're missing some players from football, Lamar Rogers being one of them. He's one of your better players. Talk about this year's version. What can we expect to see tonight and in the days preceding? Because there's no breaks. You got 8 games all kind of sandwiched in each other, within each other. Talk about what we expect to see tonight.
Well, I mean, we got a young backcourt. We got young players. We've got a senior, Master Taplin, who we'll be relying on, 6'5" senior, about 200 pounds. He's probably our best player. Marquez King, Jr., about 6'3", scorer, dribbler, very good basketball player. Need some work. I think they need some work. They're young. I think, we're going to be competitive. We got some good players. We don't have our starting point guard is the quarterback for the Bulldogs. They had a good game Saturday against Rio Grande. So that's what we're working with, Coach. We got a young backcourt. We got some hungry guys. We got some guys that played JV sparingly last year that are going to get some minutes today. And, we're just going to compete.
Coach, the other thing is normally, you have 2 or 3 scrimmages before the season starts, right? Normally in a normal season, this is not normal for anybody. So you went from your pandemic pods of 5 to jumping right into action. Now, some of the other things that haven't been worked on and couldn't be the shooting, the individual skills, the things that we do in the summer to get better. What do you think, what kind of basketball do you think we'll see tonight in the first game where the kids, some of them haven't played really in live action for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, I can expect the kids to be a little winded. I mean, we try to work on conditioning, but I expect the kids to be a little winded when they get up and down and they play a real game, not an AAU game, an hour game, with a running clock and the clock stops at the last 2 minutes. I think they're going to get a chance to play a real game. And I think those first few minutes, we may see some jitters, little butterflies, and maybe a few guys sucking wind. Like when we'll go, I've got a sophomore, I've got a 6'5" sophomore. That's pretty, that could be a good player. He gets up and down that floor in a real game, and I think I think guys are gonna need a break. Need to come sit down and get back in there with the adrenaline flow of the game. And without spectators, it's kind of hard to even judge, really, to be honest with you, Ed.
Yeah, Coach, I think you're right, because when those spectators are there, and you talk about adrenaline, you've had it, I've had it, that adrenaline rush where you feel invincible, right? And then all of a sudden you crash. And this is a little bit different because game speed is different than practice speed. And then you're putting on the uniform. And believe me, the guys know, your players know who you are. They know who you are, and they want to win for you too. One thing I want to ask you too, and we asked you this on the radio on Sunday on 99.9 about Coach Holzman, because I still remember we did that documentary, Papa Dog, on ProView Networks, and you said this after one of the games: Coach Holzman is like a second father to me. Talk a little bit about what advice he's given you in taking over the reins of a program he largely built for. It's still known, right? Holzman Court, the court's named after him. Talk a little bit about his advice to you.
Yeah, I mean, my father taught me how to play the game. My father's from Cleveland. I come from a long line of basketball players, from Ohio. And so, when I got to see ball in New Mexico, it seemed like, man, they're playing some good ball at Albuquerque High. And when I met Coach Holzman, he just took that role, because you want your point guard to think like your head coach. And Coach Holzman immediately took that role with me. And my father allowed him to go ahead and show me, what he wanted to show me, which, Coach Holzman used to have skull sessions. Just on, like, every Friday, you would have to sit there and he would lecture. He was
I heard
a
about
teacher.
those.
Yeah, he was a teacher. And he was also baseball manager, professional baseball manager. So he used to do those things like with Branch Rickey and do those skull sessions.
Wow. God,
He used to do a lot of, he used to do a lot of lecturing, a lot of storytelling. And I do that as well. Like you said, you think they know me, but they don't really know that I played professional basketball. That I'm 5'7". I grew up at Carlos Ray. I went to Carlos Ray Elementary. You know,
Right.
I was headed to Truman, just like the rest of the guys, but then they were playing basketball at parochial school. So I tell a lot of stories, a lot of stories that they don't know why Jim Holzman's name is on that court. They have no idea. Honestly, the kids have no idea why Jim Holzman's name is on that court, that he won 600 games. And like you mentioned, Ron was there 14 years. And I have much respect for Ron, even though a lot of people say, well, he wasn't a Bulldog. But I have much respect for him because, he stayed there for a long time. So it's going to be interesting, man. It was Ron, and then we had Ron Estrada was the coach. I think F.M. Wilson, and myself. So I think there's been, 4 coaches?
Yeah, it's not a
Albuquerque
long
High?
list. Not a long list.
I mean, I may have left someone out, but I'm thinking F.M. Wilson, Jim Holzman, Ron Estrada, Ron Garcia, myself.
That's right. I can't think of one. I remember Coach Wilson. Now, I want to ask you this too, because we asked you this on Sunday. One of Coach Holzman's greatest strengths, and you've got some great assistants, was having Coach Pino, Coach Metters, Coach Ron Estrada, Coach Abe Estrada, Coach Ron Garcia, Coach Dave Romo, some great assistants around him, great assistants. Now, talk about some of the assistants you have. You mentioned Brian Wiley, Ed Benavides, and 2 former Bulldogs, and Miguel Tittman and Brandon Schartz. Talk about how important it is to have them as part of your staff.
Right now, we're just gelling, trying to, learn each other's personalities. And what kind of, I'm interested in what kind of team they had. Brandon's team, with Kenny Thomas, and then Miguel playing behind Kenny, and then actually starting, and then Ed Benavides having his first opportunity to coach a game, JV game, and I know he's done other sports, and they're excited. So we're all excited. We all get along. We all have different personalities, but we all get along, and we want to win. And we're all about tradition as well at Bulldog City. And like I said, I was fortunate enough, and I know a lot of people play for Coach Holzman, but because I grew up in a different community, Ed, if you understand what I'm saying, than the rest of the Bulldogs, and my father being from Cleveland, my mother being from Louisiana, and they would say, you know Kano Brown? You know Ronell Brown? I don't know them guys, And so I came from I was outsider coming into a Bulldog City, and Jim Holzman took me under. So I was able to be around Jim Holzman a lot because he wanted me to be the straw that stirs the drink. That's what he used to tell me. I want you to be the straw that stirs that drink. And so I just soaked up a lot of the history with Jim Holzman, maybe more than the other ones. And then I spent a lot of time with Coach Alvin Matters. We coached, AAU ball together. And so, when I see the old Bulldogs like, Arnold Senna and Jab and AC and Rogers, we got Lamar Rogers on our team. Right. I played with Stevie and Mike, Stevie and Mike Rogers.
Oh, yeah.
Legendary players as well. And I try to tell Lamar about, Stevie and Mike. He don't even really know how good they were.
No. Some of the games back at Dennis Chavez Community Center back on Sundays, right? Man, I was glad to be included in some of those games. Those were some legendary games. Larry Williams, Ernest Jenkins, Richard Jenkins, Stevie Rogers, Eric Gandy, nothing, Arnold Senna, Anthony Collins, nothing but green and white, and, one blue and gold guy lived down there. Ben Santisteban would go down once in a while. But when you mention those kind of names, and the history to us is important, and I'm saying that sometimes for millennials, it's not as important. So you're kind of right about that, but I think it's good that you do mention those things because they, again, Jim Holzman Court, they should know who Jim Holzman is, right? I mean, incredible coach.
Yeah, I think there's a little generational gaps, Ed, you're a little more seasoned than I am. But I'm just right behind you. So I grew up in that generation. I'm still looking young. I have to say that, Coach. I haven't talked too much trash. I haven't been talking too much trash lately, Coach. I haven't talked too much trash lately, Ed. But I'm trying to bridge that generational gap, between these young guys. and these more well-seasoned guys, you know,
Oh,
and try to
well,
bring that generational gap together. So because I know they want to help assist. I know they want to come in the gym and a guy said, "You play for Bulldog City?" And I want to introduce those guys. Say, "Yeah, he played for Bulldog City. He won a championship." You know, I told him a story about my Vida Loca, Johnny Tapia, who was my good friend, and I
right.
attended his party. You know, his birthday party. They didn't even know who he was, and I'm saying, "Wow." You know, Bobby Foster went to
Hmm.
Albuquerque High,
You,
and
you, went, you mentioned season. It's a good way of saying old, and I'm getting there for sure. But I've seen those memories, right? The ones you mentioned, and maybe you were right about that. That you weren't, as far as an outsider from not coming from the Kirk or the DC area or Barelas or East San Jose, but they embraced you and everybody when all the all-time dog greats are mentioned. Your name's right there. Now I say this about Kenny. Kenny won a championship, right? But Kenny really wasn't lived. He didn't live here. So when Bulldog greats are mentioned, not that he wasn't a great one, his name isn't really mentioned with the Stevie Rogers and the Dave Romos and the Jimmy Connors, Jesse Cleavers, all the great Arnold Sennas, all the great big men that they had. Not that he wasn't great. T.J. Cunningham, who played with you, Terrence Cunningham was man. He was one heck of a player as well. So again, that Bulldog legendary stuff goes on and on, Coach, and it doesn't end. It never ends.
yeah, Kenny Thomas was a great bulldog, you know, and then he went on was a great Lobo and played all those years in the NBA. And so I don't know, there's a lot of guys like Willie Banks probably could have done the same thing, to be honest. And there's a lot of guys, Stevie Rogers might have could have done the same thing. But I think the circumstances were different. And like you say, Kenny coming from, you know, Texas, and then transferring into Albuquerque High, always they might want to put that asterisk there, but you know I never put that asterisk there because he was a great bulldog.
Yes, he
I
was.
remember those games. He played with Miguel Titman, and look at all those guys that played during the time that Kenny was playing. That went on, you know, Taman Domzlowski, and then the other guy, LaQuavo, I can't think of his name, but he went to U of A. He was 6'10". And so, you know, that was a great year. Damian Jenkins, I think, was a point guard during that time with Kenny. And
You
so
know
he,
what?
he could have been a Lobo, you
Yes,
know.
he was. He was for a while. And there's another name that I've totally forgot because Coach Ron Garcia thought he was one of the best of all time. Damian Jenkins as a Bulldog point guard, and he definitely was, along with his father Richard. Got about a minute left, Coach, and I want to ask you this real quick. What can we expect to see early in the season? Because you got Santa Fe, Capital, Manzano, Las Lunas all bunched together. Not really time for reflection. You just go, go, go. What can we expect to see from the Bulldogs early in the season?
Well, I think we're going to be competitive. I think people are going to see that we do have some talented guys. You know, we're not going to tonight. We're not going to worry about we're missing our two starters. We're not going to worry about that. We're just going to go out and play basketball. And for these next few games, we're just going to go out and play basketball. We're going to adjust as we go, and we're going to compete. And I think hopefully they'll get an idea of how competitive their coach is. Because right now, just like I'm doing this interview with you, you know, I'll laugh every now and then, but you know, in the heat of the battle, you know, I'm very competitive, and I don't think anybody really wants to lose. I haven't had the experience of losing, and you know, so yeah, I want to go out and win every game, and so
Yeah.
I think you know today, hopefully we'll get a chance to see. I'm not playing, you know. I told the guys, Coach Holzman told me he had never lost a game. Ed,
Right.
Coach Holzman said he did everything he did to prepare us to win, so that the loss was on them. And I told them the same thing, Ed.
Yeah, it's
I'm not
definitely
playing the game. I'm not playing the game.
no, but I think that you mentioned preparation, and you learned a lot as far as game preparation from Coach Holzman. I remember hearing about those full sessions from Lawrence Mitchell, from Ronell Brown, from a lot of my Albuquerque High friends, Arnold Senna. So those things were legendary. Coach Greg Brown, you'll face off against Santa Fe tonight. Coach Coleman and I, Coach Joe Coleman and I will see you there. We wish you the best of luck.
All right. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks so much for joining us. For producer Alden Iawani, I'm Ed Nunez. We'll see you next week on the Sports Desk.